Yo guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about Embers of the Uncrowned. So this is a new MMO that's really new in terms of what we've been able to actually see. I don't know that I would actually say this is a beta or an alpha yet, but the game is actually looking pretty good, and we've just got to play it for the first time during Steam's Next Fest that's currently happening right now, and you can actually download and play it right now. So let's go ahead and talk about it. Okay, so as I said, Embers of the Uncrowned is a new MMO. It is an isometric MMO, so that's going to be a little bit different for some people if you're not used to games like Lost Ark or other ARPGs that often have this viewpoint. However, it's not exclusively isometric, and actually if you go into a dungeon, you'll actually find that you can basically do an over the shoulder or over the back angle the same way you'd play World of Warcraft or Guild Wars or Final Fantasy or many other MMOs. I think this is actually one of the very unique things about this game. In particular, it's probably going to get a lot of eyes that are going to directly compare it to Lost Ark, and I think that you would actually be incorrect to do so. I would say that in a weird way, this is like an amalgamation of a isometric with an over the shoulder or over the back camera MMO. So a combination of the two. And that is actually, I think, one of its coolest parts. The fact that they can actually play with that. And you not only are playing isometric when you are playing isometric, but you have the ability to move your camera, even though you're playing in an isometric view. Now, a problem that I had very often, I felt like in Lost Ark, was the camera positioning felt awful many times, and so it would mess with some of my skill shots, or the angle just wouldn't feel right, or sometimes there would even be things blocking my vision. Again, this is one of the strengths of this game, is being able to move the camera not only as players but as the developers. So when you do go into that dungeon mode, you can have an entirely different experience. This is something that is very unique, and I've never actually seen in an MMO before. So I think it's worth talking about, and I think it's genuinely one of the coolest aspects about Embers of the Uncrowned. Combat in the game is very fun, and like I said, it's probably going to get compared a lot to Lost Ark because of the isometric view, but even though it's not on the level of Lost Ark, I would still say that it's very fun, and making builds is actually very enjoyable for me so far. I don't know how many builds will eventually be available at launch, because some of the talent trees seem like they're locked behind, not the demo, so it does seem like there's going to be a limited amount that you can have access to right now. But at least right now, the build that I have going right now is really cool, and basically it's a combination of building my combo stacks and then going stealth and doing a bunch of big damage with one of my other skills. That's not traditionally a finisher, but I was able to turn it into a finisher via some of my talents. I love the variability here, and you can kind of look at these different skills and get an idea of all the different uses and possible builds that you might be able to make in the future. There's another finisher, for example, that gives you a lot more mana regen, and you can use that in the throwing build where you're doing more of the throwing knives from range, and doing so eats up a lot more mana, so you do need to be regenning your mana more effectively there, hence using the other finisher. And so there's these cool little synergies that kind of work out between many of the different talent tree points, and I think that just feels really good. I like the exploration of it because it's pretty new. Is it a little simple? Probably, considering there's not that many skills right now, but I'm gonna try and wait to hold judgment until I get a better feel of what the end game is actually like. It already actually feels very good, even though I only have a handful of skills that I have access to. The cooldowns make them feel like they're perfectly fine. So one example is one of my abilities has a 5-second cooldown, and so as you can imagine, that's not very long, especially when you could put in cooldown gems if you wanted to. Which kind of brings me to my next topic that I want to talk about, is these skill gems. I actually really like the way that this kind of plays into your build crafting, where, for example, you can actually go and build into certain skills being not only generators, but also enhancement abilities. What I mean is that there's one gem, for example, that when you use it, you actually hit the enemy and you reduce their crit resistance, so effectively increasing your crit rate by that same percentage. So you could put that on a generator skill, and then using that as a way to build up more damage for a big spender skill later. Similar similar to probably how you would imagine using a finisher would work in many other games. And of course, this is all depend on your build, right? If you need to use your finisher for the mana, you probably want to figure out a different skill that you're going to use it on. But overall, I'm actually truly enjoying combat. And again, I wouldn't say that it's better than Lost Ark. It's not as good as Lost Ark for sure, so don't go in with that expectation, but it is pretty good. And I think, like I said, because of the variability of the builds so far, that it potentially has a good future here. Something I want to make sure I mention too, the game is specifically said not to be pay to win. Whether or not that's true is yet to be seen. However, we'll have to ultimately wait and see and just check it out. I'm hopeful that it will be not pay to win. Now, in terms of gameplay, people are, like I said, going to compare this a lot to Lost Ark. Lost Ark is probably one of the pinnacles for combat in the MMO genre right now. However, it's bogged down by its many, many obtuse and irritating systems. The developers at Smilegate seem to not understand how to build a system that doesn't have immense amounts of friction. So far, I haven't had any friction whatsoever when it comes to Embers of the Uncrowned. I've actually truly enjoyed their version of the Stronghold, if you're familiar with Lost Ark, or the Garrison, if you're familiar with Old World of Warcraft. It's basically the ability to go and build up your town. You actually get placed because of the story into this town in particular, and you need to build it up. And as you go through the story, you're going to recruit more people to come and live in your town and also to help you build it. As you go farther and further, you're going to find people that are better at specific jobs than others, and you're going to be able to access more buildings. You're going to have cheaper costs. Honing is actually going to get cheaper, which is something that's kind of cool. Enhancements in this game are, let's just say I'm undetermined so far. I've only put about 6 to 8 hours into the game right now, and so that's not really quite enough to know what endgame's going to look like, but it's not like there's a honing success chance that I can see yet. I could be wrong on that. You know, this is just first impressions. I'll get back to you guys some more because I'm going to be playing it a lot more over the next week because it's only available for this week. But the point being is that as you upgrade your town, you'll get access to all kinds of different stuff. This includes access to a cosmetic vendor where you can go and when you do side quests, you can turn it in for tokens and you can turn those tokens into cosmetics. There's also a resource system in the game. So instead of you spending energy on life skills, there's actually a system where as you unlock the map and you clear the enemy hordes, you're actually going to be getting resources from those areas. So it kind of incentivizes you to do a lot of that as soon as possible so that way you can start making that progress very quickly. But I like that it gives me a reason to go out into the world and kind of solve the things there. More or less, each of these areas ends up feeling like a stronghold from Diablo 4, if you're familiar with that at all. And basically, when you go there, you'll be completing either a mission or just dealing with one of these totems, and after the totem is gone, you've completed the mission, you'll be able to basically purify the area, and that will be what allows you to get access to the resources in that area. And these are just on a regular auto farm, so you don't have to actually come out here and get the materials yourselves, which is also something I like very much. In the open world, there's actually events going on as well, and then there's even gonna be world bosses that you can actually go and do that kind of spawn in, and you can farm them for some of the resources that you need for things like leveling up your gear and enhancing your weapon and stuff like that. Now, I haven't hit the cap yet, so I can't say for sure, but it did kind of feel like you could farm a decent portion of these materials. I've hit the cap for where I'm currently at in my leveling progression, but obviously I'm not fully leveled yet. Now, let's talk about really quickly the skill tree. So the skill tree is actually really cool. It kind of gives you that Diablo vibe where it seems like there's going to be a couple of different builds, but more or less it's actually similar, maybe even to the World of Warcraft skill tree. It's just horizontal instead of vertical. And then there's also a PvP specific skill tree. Now, I haven't done the PvP yet, so I can't say for sure if it's going to feel good or not, but combat in the game feels pretty good. And so if they can keep that feel in PvP without getting too much, juggling and stun locking going on, I think it will actually be pretty fun. I'll go into PvP probably in a different video once I've had a chance to actually check that out. Another thing that I think has potential here is the companion. So in the story, your first companion seems to be very, very important to you, along with leveling up your bloodline, leveling up your town and stuff. But your companion in particular also levels up with you and has their own skill tree that can interact with you in various other ways. So I think that's actually pretty cool so far, and I'm curious to see what that ultimately looks like. If we get more companions, if we're gonna get more story quests with the companions, is there potentially, room for like a relationship system with the companions, etc. Like I'm curious to see what's gonna ultimately end up happening. It does seem like you and your companion can choose to be close based on the dialogue or not, right? So you can kind of role play into being more of that lordly figure who might not be as close with some of their servants. Which kind of leads me into the next thing is the story. The story isn't bad. I'm not really a big MMO story enjoyer. It seems like most MMOs seem to drop off pretty quickly, but I think overall this isn't terrible. Spoilers for the next like 10 seconds. I'm not gonna go very broad here. Overall, what basically ends up happening is your family gets murdered, and so you are a lord that has kind of lost their lands and is trying to rebuild. You're trying to rebuild your trust with the people. You're trying to rebuild your effective combat power and stuff like that, not only for you, but also like your canyon, for example. And the idea is that you are going to be keeping people safe and therefore bringing them into like your stronghold area and building it up and, getting them back to work and stuff. And eventually, maybe try and retake the palace that was overrun by these elves. One thing I want to mention too is the character creator. So this game has a phenomenal character creator, and overall the style and look of all the characters, including things like their hair and stuff, feels very like high fidelity. I haven't really noticed the same issues I've seen in other games like Lost Ark and stuff with like hair clipping and, weird physics on like body motion and stuff. And so overall, I'm actually pretty excited for the character creator in this game. I didn't spend a ton of time on this at the moment. I didn't think I had that long, but we're probably going to go back and play with it more over the next few days. But yes, there are body sliders, there are boob and butt sliders, etc. So if you guys are excited about those things, I see a lot of people in the Final Fantasy 14 community specifically talking about butt sliders, so it's there. But there's also, just like I said, the hair looks phenomenal and stuff like that too. So the character creator, I think, is overall very high quality. I would put this up there with like Ion 2 in terms of character creator quality. And yeah, I'm excited to see more of the customization and outfits they have in the game. And they actually did send us a couple of outfits. That's why a lot of times you'll be seeing my character wearing like a swimsuit type thing. Just one of the outfits that they actually sent to the players. Clearly they know who their audience is. They're trying to target those Lost Ark players that are looking for, those swimsuit fits for sure. So my overall thoughts after my day one kind of feel for this game is I think it has a lot of potential. Now I'm curious to follow it more as we get to know more information about it. As far as I know, this is the public's like first look at Embers of the Uncrowned. But I think it's a great first look. It's not something like Chrono Odyssey where this came out and it looks really terrible. I would say this came out and it looks like it has a lot of promise. And personally, it might be my most hyped game for the next like year or two. I think it's definitely one of the games that I'm very hyped for, and I'm going to be following it very closely. I'm going to be covering any betas or alphas that come into the future, and like I said, I'm very, very interested in this game, and I'm excited to see what they can do. I really hope they lean more into not being an isometric video game, not being an over-the-shoulder or over-the-back camera, just lean into being different. Do your own thing, and I think that that can go a long way. I can't stress enough how nice it was to be able to solve any camera issues myself by changing the camera position and looking however I want, wherever I want. Was really, really nice. There are so many times in Lost Ark, for example, where I felt like the camera angle was just annoying, and so not having to deal with that here, even though you do get to enjoy that isometric vibe, definitely feels great. Overall, I'm feeling very, very positive about this, and I'm looking forward to the rest of my time during this demo. I'm going to be streaming it probably a lot over the next week and just kind of checking out the other classes. I want to do everything there is on my main character first, and then I'll probably check out the Stormbringer class, for example. And yeah, I think that, doing that and kind of getting a feel for the different classes is going to be a fun opportunity too. So if you guys have any interest in MMOs just in general, I highly, highly recommend checking out Embers of the Uncrowned. And if you guys like the video down below. Leave a comment if you guys are interested in the game or if you're not, and let me know why. I'd be curious to see what you guys are enjoying or not enjoying about the game. So subscribe to the channel if you guys want to see more stuff like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a good one, guys. Peace.